Good evening and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining in. It is January the 28th, 2021, and we're here live for our first Q&A session of the year from the co-founders of REIPro. My name is Manry, and my business partner Chris Goff will be joining us here in just a few minutes. Before we get started, just a couple of announcements kind of to get out of the way. We'll be taking live questions at the end, so open up the Q&A box and be ready to type in your question at any time. Another one, we have been working extremely hard on tons of new features and enhancements to REIPro, and that is coming to you soon. Everything is in beta testing right now, and then we hope to have that update to you in the very near future. Now, I thought I'd give you a few small details of what is coming. Number one, we have a brand new menu system. It's going to be easier to navigate the entire site. You'll be able to get to anywhere in the software from any screen. It is a major enhancement. Two, there is a revamped dashboard. There'll be some new analytics that are coming to it, as well as a brand new calendar system. You'll have multiple calendars. You can see your team members' calendars, so you can keep everything organized all in one place. There's also lots of enhancements to the marketing section, including a completely new import leads process. So going forward, when you import a list, we're going to auto-associate everything behind the scenes so that we can automatically pull analytics on the property, valuations, and more. So these are just a few of the enhancements. There's a lot more that we could talk about. Just wanted to give you a little sneak peek there as what to look forward to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Mr. Chris Goff. Welcome, Chris.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you?
Doing well. You know, this is our first live Q&A for 2021. So I can tell you we have pages of awesome questions that we're going to cover tonight, and some really, really good ones. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, I took the time today to really get into your questions and give you the correct answers, and so everybody can learn from this. And do appreciate you guys for sending in your questions. We do encourage you guys to do that. You know, learning is never going to end. And I think when we can, you know, have these trainings like this that can answer the hows, the whys, the what ifs, it's just going to get you there faster, because look, 2021 is going to be a big year in this business. So we are super excited about it. I hope you guys are excited about it, because there are a lot of good things coming. I always say it's a bright future. So with further ado, I am ready, because I know that this one's going to be a powerful one. This is going to be a good one, especially those that are with us, that are joining us tonight. Be sure, like Bo said, get those questions in, so at the end we can get those answered as well.
Okay, so this one's from John. Lease Option said, "Good evening, Chris and Bo. Hope all is well. My question that I have for you guys is, once I have an executed contract with the seller side, and once I have an executed contract with the buyer, what do I do with the contracts once I have it? Is it like wholesaling, where as soon as you get the contract, immediately take it to the title company, open up an escrow, or do you just hold on to the contract until the new buyer exercises his or her option to purchase or not purchase the property? Thank you for your time."
Yeah. Hey, John. And thanks for the question. Number one. So with lease options, you want to hold on to the contracts until the buyer is ready to buy. So it's not like wholesaling. Wholesaling, generally, we're going to get that buyer. They're going to close it within 30, 60 days, whereas a lease option, it could be 12 months. So we really don't want to send the contracts down to the title company or closing attorney, because if they start doing the title search and start doing all the, you know, document prep, they're going to send you a bill if there is no closing. So what you want to do is wait till just about the end, obviously getting your buyer in a position that they are getting funding for the deal. And at that point, we can send the contracts and get a closing date scheduled. So just hold on to them until your buyer is in a position and ready to buy.
Perfect. Next question from Keith, and it's on wholesaling. What if a seller asks a wholesaler for a proof of funds letter before the wholesaler finds a cash buyer?
Yeah. So, Keith, my first thought is maybe the seller's not too motivated, but you basically have two options in this case. Option number one, obviously, you could get, proof of funds letter if you are able to do that, and just have that with you in case it ever is brought up again. Um, if you don't, is really the question, right? So, you know, it's never ever happened to me, but it has happened to a couple of my students over the course of 10 years. And I can tell you what we did. This is what I, told my student to say. And it was, oh, okay. But basically, you want to, I would come across like, well, it's either myself or one of my partners is going to be buying the property. And I'm not sure if we're actually going to use our cash or if we're actually going to get private money or lending, a bank to fund this deal. But as soon as I can get that to you, I will get it to you. I think you just build confidence in the seller. And I think the more confidence you build with the seller, they don't really ask those types of questions, but if you do, those are the two ideas. Again, you gotta, I don't want to say skate around it because it sounds kind of cheesy, but we if you don't have one, you can't get one. Look, find a buyer as quickly as possible and maybe request it from that particular buyer, and just delay it with the seller. So I can tell you when we sold one of our rehabs, the guy was like, "Hey, I'm going to pay cash for it." And we did require a proof of funds letter, Bo, if you remember,
Oh, I
because
remember because
obviously,
we had multiple offers coming in, and
right,
we sold it in like 4 hours. So we wanted to make sure if we took his deal, proof of funds.
absolutely. So, it's not a perfect answer, but I think building more confidence in the seller and you, from the phone call, inspecting the property, all the way to meeting them. They probably won't ask you, and I think that comes with confidence, Bo. I think when you are more confident in front of people, they don't really question you anymore. Like they don't question your ability, they don't question your knowledge and so forth. And I think that just stems back to education and building that confidence. So,
Yep. And the more you get out there and do it, the more confidence you're going to have. So, and it just comes across and I think it just relaxes people, kind of instills that sense of trust.
right.
All right. Next question from Darian, lease options. Can lease option be used as a less expensive acquisition strategy with the exit strategy of a lease option for a home with a mortgage instead of actually closing on the property using seller financing with the same exit strategy? I know you mentioned to not put money in the property you don't own, so I'm not speaking about full rehabs. I'm speaking mostly about lipstick on a pig situations. Lease option deals are with nicer properties, but every property needs something. For example, if a seller didn't have the money for minor repairs, I could put the property under a lease option contract, which would give me the equitable interest to buy the property. The seller must sell to me, and once I file my affidavit, that's two forms of protection that I have the rights to purchase the property. I can then change out the carpet for LVP floors and do some minor repairs, which could allow me to charge a higher price in rent and maybe even a higher sales price as an exit strategy. It's very possible that I could be off in my thinking, but sometimes I need to hear it from somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what I love about these long questions? You have to read them, right? But
I do have to read them because we have people joining in sometimes by telephone only as well.
actually, this is one of my favorite questions of the evening because absolutely, Darian, yes, use this as an acquisition strategy. It's actually probably one of the smartest acquisition strategies. And yes, you will hear me say, you know, I hate to put money into something that I don't own, but that's kind of teaching it to the general public too. So, look, usually there's a lot of houses I've personally lived in that I've put money into because to me it was more of kind of an acquisition strategy, and it's a lot easier to explain this strategy than it would be say like a seller finance. and you get to pay the seller a little bit more. So yeah, again, don't put a lot of money into the property. Like you said, the lipstick on a pig. That's how I would like to look at it as well. And keep in mind, we are looking at nicer properties generally that just need maybe that cleanup, maybe change the carpet, like you said, do something to when people come in, they want to put a good down payment down. So I do like that. The only downside is that it eliminates one exit strategy, and that would be to seller finance. So if you lease optioned it from the owner, you could not seller finance it. But outside of that, it's a great way to buy properties with little money, because you are literally going to get control of the property. And that's what I love. I call it controlling real estate. And that's what this strategy is all about. Now, generally, I'll talk about, hey, don't put money down until you get it from the new buyer. But yes, look at it from an acquisition strategy. It's very, very smart.
Awesome. That was a good question. Okay, next question from Latanya. General question.
Oh, go back. There you go.
I must have skipped one. Okay, good. Jose on wholesaling. In your purchase agreement, contract, and REIPro, can you explain item number 7 and how this would apply for me selling the property to the second buyer in an assignment or a double close? Doesn't the original seller take care of this unless the final buyer will do this for them? And if the final buyer does this, then an addendum will have to be made, correct?
Yeah, so let's actually take a look at this contract, because I want to show everybody what Jose is talking about, and then obviously give you the answer to this. Um, let's see. Yes, I'm going to stop you for a second, Bo.
Right.
So what we're referring to, and can you see that, Bo? Just as
Yeah, I can see it's all good.
Okay, perfect. So this is the contract to purchase, and what we're talking about is line number 7. I just kind of highlight this number 7 here. And what we say, seller agrees to pay all taxes and assessments up to and including the date of title transfer. So basically what we're saying here is that if you buy the property from the owner, or the deed's changing hands, there's a closing, let's say it's 6 months out, right? So June. The owner lived in the property for 6 months, and then the new buyer's taking over the last 6 months of that particular property. The thing is that the owners are paying the taxes for the entire year before that year. Okay. So they basically fronted all of the tax money up front. So what happens at closing is that when the new buyer buys in June, they'll calculate exact days on how many days was the seller in there. And because they have paid for the remainder of the year, they will be credited at closing. Okay. It's like getting reimbursed for something you've already paid for, because look, the seller's not living in the house the second half of the year because the ownership has changed. Now, could this be negotiable? Yes, but it's usually just easier if we're going to reimburse the seller for the taxes for the time that they don't own it. It might just be easier to raise the purchase price. Now, this won't have any effect whatsoever on you selling it. So what we're saying, this is pretty standard contract language as far in just any sale, is that you're going to be the seller's going to be responsible for taxes up to the day they sell it, and then you will be responsible for whatever's remaining. It's just in most states and counties, the seller pays the taxes up front, so they need to get reimbursed that amount. So I hope that helped answer your question there. I will stop sharing, Bo, and give it back to you.
All right, let me get back here. All right, next question. Now, maybe I'll have it correct this time from LaTanya. General question. Hello, I work third shift and on Thursdays, I have to be at work at 7 p.m., so I cannot be there live to submit questions. Do I have to wait for a Q&A to submit or ask a question? I have about 4 questions. Thank you. First, how do I post deals for buyers, i.e. investors, on REI or anywhere else? Second, how do I know what zip codes are hot in my city, state, or other states? Third, if I find a seller out of state, how will I go about a contractor doing a walkthrough? And do I have to go to that state for business with the seller, buyer, or the contractor? Fourth, my biggest hurdle, how do I know if a property is worth pursuing if the numbers look like this? We have a $439,000 value, $493,000 in potential equity, and it was last sold in 2005. Or even $464,000 value, $76,000 equity, and a $550,000 sale price in 2020. I think she might be referring to a negative $76,000 in equity there. But again, thank you.
Yeah, I think the numbers were a little backwards there, potentially. Hopefully, Latonya, that was the case because number one, let's answer the first question as far as the buyers. How do you market for buyers? And again, really depends on the strategy. If you're wholesaling, that may be a different way of marketing than a lease option buyer. But just to kind of keep it general, Craigslist is one place, obvious place. And another really good place is your local Facebook groups. So you find those local real estate Facebook groups, that's going to be a really good place. I can tell you the house that I live in today that you see through here, we actually posted, hey, we were looking to buy a certain kind of property in this general area. And we had people respond from that Facebook group, which led us to the seller, his phone number. I gave him a call and we ended up structuring this deal for this particular property. So Facebook groups is definitely work. Number two, now, where are these hot areas? I want to kind of be a little general, then I'll answer is because I don't really look for hot areas. I always say, if everybody's going that way, I'm going that way because I don't want to fight out the competition. And, usually where the hot areas, the sellers know where the hot areas are. So they increase prices. They're less motivated. For me, generally speaking, I like to stay away from and on the edge of those particular hot areas. But obviously, if you've been in the business, you'll know the area, you'll know where the growth is and where those hot areas are. But if you haven't been in the business longer, you're just getting started, a local real estate agent would be the perfect person to get with to find out where are those areas, where's that next hot zip code, and so on. It doesn't matter if it's in your area or not. If you're looking at a state, you would need to find a local agent there as well. That agent's also going to answer your next question as far as the contractor, because they know a lot of contractors. They should anyways. So I would definitely ask the agent for local contractors in that particular area that you're looking at. As far as determining what's a good deal, that's kind of it's an easy question to answer. And I hope you don't think too much into this, but if you can literally calculate the cost of repairs, now this may be difficult if you're looking at property in a different area. You will need somebody there, a contractor to go over and give you bids. Could be a friend, family member, somebody like that that can take pictures, try to calculate the cost. Second, you're going to run the comps. So you can use REIPro to run those comps. And third, you're going to run the all cash offer formula. And that's going to help you determine, is this a deal? And obviously comparing that to what a seller is willing to take. Now, if there's not much equity in the property, then you might want to steer towards more of a lease option type of strategy. But REIPro is really going to make this simple. If you just literally follow those steps, what I call the executable steps. So when you pull up a property, and you scroll down, you see step 1, 2, 3, and so on. If you just follow that, that's going to literally walk you through the whole process. It's going to help you determine, is this a good deal, bad deal, the owner situation, the mortgage, all that good information that we do provide for you guys. It's going to help you evaluate this particular deal. I would also start in the education center and really going through these training series on different strategies to help also understand the foundation of it. So hopefully that helps.
Perfect. All right. Next question from Montreal. Hello, everyone. I have gone through the pre-foreclosure training several times, as well as the wholesaling pre-foreclosure training. It seems to not be able to clearly answer my question about the initial contract. I know the attorney has to draw up the contract and other documents, but what agreement contract do I need at the actual meeting for the seller to sign with the terms outlined? In other words, what initial contract am I putting in my binder to get signed? Or do I just take a notepad and write down what we agreed to, have them sign it, and send these details to the attorney? So I'm just asking, when the seller says yes to my owner financing, what do I record this on if the attorney is going to do the actual contract? Hope my question is not too confusing. Thanks for everything. And then to continue, he says, number 2, I hear from other gurus saying once pre-foreclosure is public, the seller is bombarded with letters and postcards. At what point, if any, are we just wasting money on direct mail for this type of lead? And will there ever be a way to upload and send contracts through REIPro? That would be awesome. I'm sure all subscribers would love that feature.
A long question results in, this is going to be a long answer. Okay. But it's
Yeah.
actually very simple. Okay. So good question too. And that also helps me kind of, maybe I should pay more attention in the training videos. Hey, clarify that point, which reminds me, we should probably do another one. But let's start here. There's really 2 ways that you can do this as far as the contract. Obviously, as you state, you could, once you agree with the seller, here's what's going to happen. You could have your attorney draft up the documents, the contract, everything all together in one. Okay. And then obviously present that. They'll have to have it notarized, all that good stuff. And they can do the closing that way as well. Now, it could take a few days. Maybe the seller wants to think about it and so forth. Well, you could potentially lose the deal, right? So how do we quickly, secure this deal? So that's step 1. And if you feel that you might lose the deal, then this is all you have to do. This is very, very simple. You got your questions up there, Bo? Is that contract to purchase that I just showed, which you can download, all you have to do is add an addendum, which is the second page, and you're going to specify those terms, as far as what the loan balance, the reinstatement amount, what their monthly payment, just you're basically stating the facts. Get the seller to sign that right away. That's going to secure your interest in the deal and preventing them from actually going and selling it to someone else. So to recap that real quick is step 1. Yes, you could have your attorney draw up everything, may take a little bit more time. You could stand the remote chance of, the seller going around your back. I can tell you it's never happened to me, but it could happen, right? And to prevent that, the option number 2 would just take that contract to purchase, and then we're going to specify the actual terms in the addendum part. All right. So the second part of this question was about the guru part of this, right? So just think about this for a second. Okay. So, and it's not to say any more than what I'm going to say, but gurus usually, they steer you in a way that says, oh, this is bad because I have something that's good. Okay. And, I'm kind of the person that, look, just say it the way it is. I think growing up in the Northeast, that's just what we did, just tell me the way that it is. And I can usually smell that from somebody that says, hey, sellers in pre-foreclosure are just going to get bombarded. I could tell you there's not many investors in the United States that actually understand how to work with someone in pre-foreclosure and actually connect the dots and successfully close the transaction. I think I'm maybe one of the few people, Bo, and I don't want to really put myself in that particular category, but that actually teaches it. And so there's
Mhm.
not that many people that teach it, where the opposite side of that, everybody and their mother teaches wholesaling. But pre-foreclosures is a little bit different beast. It's definitely a very niche strategy. I love it. I think everybody should be doing it. And and I think, direct mail has worked for us for over 20 years. 20 years working pre-foreclosures. Every single one of my students that has done a pre-foreclosure deal has got the deal from a direct mail, either postcard or letter. The majority of them are postcards. Okay. So I don't want to create something new. I kind of just go with, hey, this has worked forever and I know it's going to work. Now, I will say you have to be creative though. You gotta change the look, the feel, and all that good stuff. So um, let's talk about my personal opinion on this. If we were going to use direct mail, there's like no better time than right now, and it's because of COVID. You're going to find there are so many more people at home all day long. Either they're working from home or they've lost their job. And in most cases, pre foreclosures could have lost their job. They're going to be at home as well. So if direct mail was going to, what would be the best time in the last 20 years? To me, it'd be right now as far as direct mail. So just keep that in mind that you're going to find more people at home responding to these types of things. And but at the same time, yes, I want you to be creative, and that's something we saw coming as a company, and that's why we went and created some new designs for you guys, in just anticipation that eventually, this is all going to come full circle and a lot of people are going to end up losing their home. And that's where you need to step in as an investor to really help the situation out. You're going to help everyone. It's such a great strategy. And I would encourage, if you haven't learned this particular strategy, is to go in and go through those educational videos.
Chris, also, just an old sales adage. A lot of times you got to touch people several times. So that's one of the reasons we built this thing with a multi-touch
Yeah.
feature. And you can also change the postcard message out. One postcard may not work very well in that situation, but the other one did. So you might want to try a 2 or a 3 touch mailer using different postcards as well.
Yeah. And as far as the contracts, here's what you can do. Let me tell you what you can do. You can upload the contract. So if you go to a property, open up the menu tools, and you could upload the contract in your documents area. And to me, that's where all documents should be stored per property. A lot of times, especially with contracts, they change. I've got to add this or I got to take away this. The agreement's a little bit different in this case versus that case. It's not normal to use the identical language 100% of the time. So I'm usually always changing something like, hey, the storage shed is included in the purchase of the sale. I mean, it could be something that small. If you upload it into the documents area, you can actually email the contracts from that point. And I know Bo and I were actually talking about this today, and there's a lot of companies, DocuSign and other companies that can, make it quick, but maybe I'm all old school. I find it difficult with a lot of sellers we work with that they even understand how to even log into sites like that. And I think we've tried to keep it simple from that point of view. I think for some people it'd be great to where you could just have people sign, digitally and send it back. And it could be something we might, look into as we move on. I know there obviously would be a cost to this, to have that particular feature, because if we do it, it's like I want to do it right. I don't want to just give you something and put a marketing label on it and say, "Hey, we have this for you." I want to make sure that it's right. So, um, I can actually show them real quick, Bo, if you want. Let me
Sure,
show
go
them
for
how
it.
to do that real quick. Let me share that
Okay.
screen real quick. And all right, so when you're in a property, if you click this menu tools right here and you go to the document section, once I have that contract, I could upload the document from here. Once I upload this document, let me just see if I can upload. I think I've got the contract there. From this point here, I can actually do a few things with it. So you obviously delete it, but right here, you could actually attach that and send it as an email to the seller. Now, it's not digitally signed and all that stuff, but it is a way to get that contract out pretty quickly to the owner. So hopefully that kind of helped. Back to you, Bo.
All right, let me get in my screen here. Okay, a couple of questions are coming in the chat window. If you guys don't mind putting it in the Q&A panel for later, that would be perfect. It'll help me out. Next question from Alfred. How would I or should I approach a law firm representing a family who has a condo in probate? 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 878 square feet, built in 1982. It's part of an apartment-like building. ARV is 112,000, but I haven't seen it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, definitely approach them. I think you just contact the firm. I think you just kind of keep it simple, Alfred, and just say, "Hey, I'm having trouble finding the owner." Now, I would suggest trying to find next of kin through our skip tracing. So that might be a really good way to not have to talk to the firm. But if you find yourself that you have to, go for it. Don't let that hold you back, and just say, "Hey, my name is Alfred, and I'm a local investor looking to buy some property. I noticed this particular property maybe in probate, and I'm looking to buy. I don't know if I could leave my information with you to pass along." I think you just keep it that simple. I would first skip trace and look at the next of kin and maybe try to reach other people, um, versus maybe contacting the firm right away, because they obviously are going to have a lot more understanding of what they want to do with the property, which could obviously change some things. So I would try to get a hold of next to kin first.
It's interesting that you said that, Chris. I actually ran into that situation 2 days ago. I actually pulled up a property. I was pulling up one for my mom, and I noticed the lady was deceased. And so I immediately just skip traced it and started calling down the next of kin. So.
Is that the one you were telling me about?
Oh, who knows? Could have been
Yeah, I think you were.
over in Noonan.
Yeah, and you just decided to call them.
Well, I called on about 3 or 4 of them, and that was one of them. As soon as it said deceased, I hit the next of kin, called 3 of them on there, and finally got somebody. Okay, next question from John. Lease option question. Hey, Chris and Bo, my question to you is: in a lease option with the seller, when you make the monthly payments to the seller, are you just paying the monthly mortgage payments to the seller, or are you paying the monthly mortgage payments with a little extra on top?
Hey, John, thanks for the question. And it's pretty simple. You're going to pay the seller, obviously, whatever you agree to come to terms on. But I always like to take the monthly rental rate and then subtract at minimum 200, because I also have to know, hey, if I can only rent it for this much to my new buyer, I want to at least profit that $200. Okay, so if you can get it less and profit more power to you, because it's not something where you just take over a mortgage payment. That'd be more of kind of like a pre-foreclosure situation where the seller's just looking to get out of the deal. But if you do run into a seller looking to just get out of the deal, of course you want to go as low as possible, but enough to maintain the mortgage, obviously. So use that $200 number as just kind of a general reference, because that's something I look at as kind of a minimum. The only way I would take maybe $50 or $100 monthly cash flow is maybe if I can get in with a lot less money or I can get a better sales price. I was always told if the seller picks the price, you pick the terms. If the seller picks the terms, you pick the price. If the seller picks the sales price and the terms, follow up with them in 30 days because there's only one thing that's going to change their mind, and that is time. People's circumstances change in time. So hopefully that kind of helped you there. Is giving you a general rule of thumb that I follow, that for years now I've followed that. But it's usually based on a rental rate. And then I'm going to at least want to profit $200 on a deal, if not more.
Good question. All right, coming from John, another lease option. Hey, Chris and Bo, my question to you is in a lease
Next one.
option with the seller.
Next one.
All right, let's go to the next one. Jeffrey, what is the best searches to find new homeowners that will work with a BRRR method? That's buy, rehab, rent, and refi. I am assuming the numbers are close to a wholesale deal. Thanks.
Yeah, if I had to pick two, obviously the vacant and the absentee are going to be my two as far as marketing searches. So I can pull these properties in bulk and actually market them. Those would be my top two. Number three would be actually driving the area and trying to find some of those hidden opportunities that way, or tired landlords where, you drive by and you see like a bed and a couch sitting at the, getting ready to be picked up for trash. That's a good time to hit somebody with basically a wholesale offer, and that you could rehab and so forth. Obviously, keep in mind the area. I generally want to do this type of strategy where I rehab it, rent it out, refi. It's going to be in somewhat of a decent area. I always call that kind of the C or higher areas. And that's going to be kind of that middle price range and a little bit higher than that. And of course, any areas that, you see growth in are going to be great areas as well.
Okay. Next question from Lisa. For lease options, do you have any tips for organizing the business as far as accepting buyer payments, how to pay sellers each month, the bills, etc., maybe QuickBooks? Thanks. Yeah, Lisa, so this is a really good question here. And before I give you kind of some of my personal tips, I do want to just say and disclose that I am not an accountant or CPA or, anything. These suggestions I'll give you purely from my own personal experience. So, a lot of people simply use a spreadsheet to keep track of what they're doing as far as their income, their expenses, and so on. Other people use rental management software like Rent Perfect. Other people use QuickBooks, Quicken, and stuff like that. Now, me personally, I do use QuickBooks. Even before I got into real estate investing, I'm a longtime user of Quicken, so it just kind of naturally felt good for me on that. But I'll tell you how I got, QuickBooks organized. But as far as accepting buyer payments, I have people mail me a check, but I've also used electronic means. I've used companies like payyourrent.com. That worked out real well. I believe I've used several of them. I believe Pay Your Rent also helped me submit that actual payment to the credit bureau. I was helping build some credit for one of my renters at the time. I also have lease option and seller finance deals. Both they've paid me through Zelle. So I think it's going to be a kind of a personal preference as to how you get it on the income side. But as far as QuickBooks goes, when I first started setting this up for managing properties, I did a lot of research years ago on how to set this up. And there's definitely more than one way to do it and set it up. I can tell you how I do it. And it's always worked for me. It's always worked for my accountant. So here's what I do. So in QuickBooks, if I'm going to set up a tenant and want to track it that way, I set the tenant up as a customer. This way I can send out an invoice, statements, and those kind of things, as well as do a receive payment feature in there if you want to set it up and track it by the customer. Now, the most important part for me is when I set up a property or a unit, like a unit A, unit B, and so on, I set those up in the classes. If you go up underneath the list and go to class, you can set up your properties there. And when you're entering these income and expenses, I associate every item with a class, okay? And this way, what this allows you to do is run a profit and loss statement by class. So if you're familiar with QuickBooks and you run these P&L statements, you want to see how your business is doing, the health of it, how profitable it is. That's great if you're just wanting to look at it from an overall picture for you as a company. But I like to look at how is my property doing. You know, I have rents coming in, I have maintenance cost, I have property manager expenses, I have rehab cost, all these different things. And I want to know on a property by property basis, am I profitable up or down and so on. So everything is associated with a class. Under the report section, it has a profit and loss statement by class. And that's the way I found that really helps me the most. Now for everything else, use your chart of accounts to classify all of your entries, like the maintenance, the rehab, the cost, the utilities, and so on. That's going to allow you to look at your business as a whole. Where are you spending your money across everything? That'll come out on your general P&L and your balance sheets. And that's what you would use it for right there. So hopefully that will point you in the right direction. I would advise, of course, given the accountant, your accountant, he or she may want to set it up in a different way, but this really has worked well for me for years.
And we are not associated with QuickBooks.
Not at all.
That was a good commercial for them, by the way, Bo.
It was. I guess I could have done a quick little training video, huh? Instead of set one up, be another hour. Okay. Next question from Larry, Pre-foreclosures. When is the moratorium on foreclosures going to end? I've heard several different dates. Thank you. You guys are awesome.
Well, I'm actually glad you asked this question. And so I wrote all these dates down because it actually just changed. So I'm going to read it to you as I wrote it out. All FHA back loans have been extended for another month after it was extended already another month. So it was set for February 28th. The new date is now March 31st. So any FHA backed will be March 31st, and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae extended to February 28th. So a lot of these were getting ready to expire at the end of January. They did move these to February 28th, and then FHA took one more step and they went to the 28th and then extended it to the 31st. Now, I do want to mention there are a lot of other loans besides FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and those are all the privately held mortgages. And I wanted to give everybody an answer on this one because not many people know, well, okay, that's great if it's government backed, but what about all the other loans out there? So all of those companies, like if Citibank or Wells Fargo, they gave you just a loan where it wasn't FHA or government backed, they have their own payment deferral and forbearance program. So obviously each homeowner, it could be different. And that's just something that they would need to contact the lending institution and find out what they worked out. But those are the new dates on the pre-foreclosure.
Yep, seems like it's a little bit of a moving target because it just keeps moving and keeps delaying. Who knows what'll happen?
Well, the thing is, they're still in trouble.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I would be marketing them right now. Don't wait don't wait till like, oh, it's the last day. It's almost like waiting to the last or up to the auction date. Like it just gave you guys a little bit more time. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
And if you wait all the way to the courthouse, if you've never been down to the courthouse to try to bid on these properties in the Good Old Boy Network, who've been there for years and they're always buying these things up, they don't like the newcomers either. They'll overpay for a house just to get you not to come back next month. So we like to get them before all that happens anyway. All right, John, lease options. How can you get a ballpark estimate on how much the mortgage would be for a new buyer looking at the taxes on the property? All right, John, as far as looking at the taxes on the property and trying to forecast, what a mortgage would be for a new buyer, you really can't do that. You need to have the sales price. So once you have the sales price, what you're going to pay for it, then you can go into step 4 of REIPro, and you can go to the offer section. There's a seller finance offer there, which has a mortgage calculator. There you can enter in the sales price. You can enter in the terms such as the interest rate, any kind of down payment, any kind of balloon, how much you're going to amortize this loan over, and it's going to give you that mortgage principal and interest payment. So can't really do it off the taxes, but once you know the sale price, then that's how you're going to go about calculating that mortgage. John, hey, Chris and Bo, when I put a potential qualified buyer in the property that I have under contract and they're working on getting their credit straight to purchase the property, how can I get them to close the deal with the individual that I referred them to help them get approved?
Yeah, this is going to be hard because, your buyers can really go with whomever they want to, right? But I think this way. Most people may feel obligated, to go with the people that have actually helped them. But also keep in mind that, it's also the mortgage broker's job to stay in communication with them as well if they're going to get their business. So I think your job is to kind of connect the dots for them. But also keep in mind, I know our mortgage guy, it doesn't take a few minutes to plug in the information for the buyer and spit out the outcome and the things that they need to work on. So I wouldn't say that they're spending a tremendous amount of time, but I do believe it is also the mortgage broker's job to continue that communication with that buyer so they do have the opportunity to get their business when they are in a position. So, but at the end of the day, there is no guarantee with that.
Nope. JR, seller financing question. Thank you for taking my question. Being that there are only 3 ways to buy real estate, could you briefly cover how to construct multiple offers that could benefit the seller once I've established the ARV? More importantly, can you explain how the balloon options work and the exit strategy profit centers, please? Much appreciated. You guys rock.
That is a big question. So what I thought I would do is show you an REIPro. Okay, so just for time's sake, I did already plug in numbers, but I want to show you what we're talking about when we, talk about multiple offers to a seller. How would that look? And then how do we get rid of it? What are some possible exit strategies? And I know there's another, question as far as how does the balloon work? So I'm going to switch screens here, Bo, and get back into a property. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see it? Perfect. All right. So once I'm in the property, this is just a random property but I want you to go down to step 4. So this is where the seller offers are going to happen. Now, obviously you've already run comps on the property, you determine the ARV on the property and so forth. So my first offer is going to be that cash offer. And I think this is generally the offer you want to lead forward with. No matter if it's a lease option or not, just kind of lead forward with the cash offer because most sellers generally want to be cashed out. So go through this formula. So I just went in, plugged in 25,000 in repairs. I know this particular area as far as the acquisition cost and so forth. Went down, did a wholesaler profit, did a retailer's profit. And I think the important thing is I went ahead and calculate that to our offer at 248. Now, keep in mind the ARV is 361 with 25,000 in repairs. Now that could just be carpet, updating, things of that nature. But when you make a cash offer, it's always going to be the lowest number. Let's go to the opposite end of that spectrum and go to our lease option offer. So in this example, and again, you could change these numbers around, 325. So if the ARV is 361, I know it probably needs some updating. Obviously, this would be a home that's livable. It's not something that's disgusting or anything where you couldn't have somebody rent a property there. Um, I always start off with the monthly payment. So I did research, and this particular property rents for 2450. Okay, so I made an offer 2150. So that would give me some positive cash flow. Once I determine that monthly payment, that always tells me what the down payment would be. So as far as how I structure that is, if the owner were to rent this property, just say that they would rent it, generally they would get a security deposit, which would be refundable and is generally equal to the monthly rent amount. So if I give them a little bit more than that and it's non-refundable, that already looks better than just renting the property out. Okay. Always shoot for, 36 or 24-month term, and always put in a $500 repair threshold. And what that means is, to the seller, I'm going to take care of the maintenance cost and repairs up to $500 per occurrence. That way the seller's not always, oh, I got to fix the toilet for the tenant again. I got to fix this. So we kind of maintain the property for all the little things that do go wrong. So that's my high end. And then we look at the seller finance. You're going to see that my sales price is just about in between my cash sales price and my lease option sales price. But because I'm going to own the property, I can put more money down, and most sellers would require more money down versus a lease option where the owner still owns it. They're just leasing it with the option to buy. I want to go a low interest rate. I'm going to amortize it over 30 years. And here's that balloon. We put 5 years in here. So what does that mean? What that means is I'm going to make monthly payments up to 5 years, and then whatever the balance owed at the end of that term, I would need to cash them out. Now, that would be typically a refinance. So I'd go to the bank, get a mortgage, cash them out. Could you go longer? Yes. Could you go shorter? Yes. Put in the property taxes and the insurance amount. And if you look over here at the offer, it's going to give me my total payment here of $1,723 to the owner. Okay. Below that is the schedule. Okay. And if you go all the way down to the 60th month, if you waited 5 years to cash them out, now keep in mind, you can cash them out at any point during this 5 years, next month or 5 years from now. As you can see, my balance owed would be 239. So I would need to go to a bank to get the 239 to cash them out. Okay. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense there as far as multiple offers. Now what I want to show you is, now what? So, well, the good thing is when you make multiple offers, it's not to the seller. It's not, if you just did a cash offer, they would be like, yes or no. But when you give them multiple offers, they fail. They get so confused on which offer to take. They're going to generally take the best one that suits them. Let me go back to this because this is a good point. If we go back to the cash offer here, if you are a seller that is sick and tired, done with the house, give me my money, I'm done, they're going to take your cash offer. If you have a seller that can't accept that low cash offer and they really want as much as possible for the house, maybe they go with the lease option offer. If you have a seller that says, at the end of the term in 5 years, I want you to look at down here, total received would be 353,000 because they're making interest on it. Plus that $10,000 could be very enticing to the owner because they need cash. they would go with this offer. So the seller gets so confused on which offer to take, they fail to realize they don't have to take any of these offers, right? So that's where your acceptance ratio is going to go up of sellers saying yes to your offer just by giving them more than just one. All right, so now what do we do? So I've already plugged in these numbers and I'm not going to go through each one, but I want to show you a couple of different scenarios. Now, if I were to go wholesale this property, I would click on wholesale and my exit strategy would be wholesale. I just simply plugged in the numbers that I just offered the seller to my left. And here's what I'm going to sell for it. You can see your profit would be 9,000 and the retailer's potential profit would be 43. Here is a purchase sell. Now, again, in this particular example, we're going to fill out all the same information that you did for the offer. In this case, I selected cash just to make the example simple. I'm going to sell the property at full price value, which we already ran the comps, 361, 2 months to sell. And then I've threw in some realtor cost, closing costs, and all that stuff there. You can see what your total profit would be if you bought the house, fixed it up, and resold it. Another example, I said, what happens if they take the lease option offer? So basically, to the left, I plug in my numbers that they accepted. And then to the right, I'm going to stay in the middle of this deal. I'm going to sell this property for 365, which is a little bit more than what the value is today. Keep in mind, a lease option buyer isn't going to buy till the future. So I'm going to go up a little bit, not too much, but I'm going to go up a little bit on the price. But I want 10,000 down. Monthly payment, the rental rate is $24.50. And you could scroll down and actually see your different profit centers. So you'd make $7,000 the day you did it, $300 a month positive cash flow, total cash flow there, and then the back end difference. And of course, there'd be some closing costs in there, so it could be a little bit less than this, but it gives you an idea. Would this be a good exit strategy? And then I'm going to give you one more, and that's if they took the seller finance strategy, and let's say that you seller financed it back out. All I'm doing is plugging in what the seller agreed to from my offer standpoint on the left. And then again, I'm going to sell this property for a little bit more because I'm financing it for the new buyer. Being that it's a seller finance, I should be able to get more down payment. So I'm going to ask for 20,000 down, 6% interest, and you could play with the interest rate here. I'm going to amortize it over 30 years, but I'm only going to do it for the new buyer for 3 years. I have 5 years with the seller, 3 years with the new buyer. So if they can't buy, I still have 2 more years to extend it, get the property back, whatever I want to do with it. That's going to total up their costs. And if you go all the way down here, you could see your potential profit if you went this way. But keep in mind, guys, that if they took your offer and you wanted to buy it, you don't have to sell it. You could rent it. You could lease option it. You could sell or finance it. If they took your lease option offer, you could rent it. You could lease option it. You could sell it. If they took your seller finance offer, you could fix it up and sell it. You could rent it. You could lease option it or sell or finance it out again. So there's multiple ways that you can analyze these deals to find out what's best for you. And again, a lot of this would be determined based on the offer that's accepted. Okay, so hopefully that was a kind of quick. I already had the numbers plugged in, but that's what this awesome calculator does for us as an investor, is to really analyze multiple different ways because I'm offering the seller multiple options. So,
What a great answer. And that's why we do this for you guys. And thanks for showing up, because that was actually a really good learning lesson for people right there.
all right, back to you, Bo.
Back to me. All right. Here we go. Let's see. Looks like another one from JR. Two-part question. Suppose you find yourself in a seller finance situation on a pre-foreclosure where you have to decide to take private money. Is it prudent to ask for an additional amount of money to cover the 3 to 6 months of holding expenses while rehabbing, provided the terms keep the deal profitable, or is it better to wholesale the entire deal to a seller? If wholesaling it, how do you present the offer to entice the seller?
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for your questions. You should always underline always borrow the total amount that you're going to need from start to finish. Because if you don't, it's going to come out of your pocket. So I would much rather it come out of somebody else's pocket. But there are some deals where, you can get in with another investor and it's a 50-50 deal or something like that. I hear you. But if you can get all the money, get all the money. Otherwise, wholesale it. Okay. That's just going to make way more sense if you can't get all of it, especially if you don't have any money. You're going to need somebody to put all the money up front from start to finish. And I'm talking about holding costs, closing cost, everything included from start to finish on the deal. Otherwise, wholesale it, and your offer would just be as normal. You're going to get all the details of the pre-foreclosure. You're going to specify that again in that contract with an addendum, and then you're going to sign that paperwork over to the new investor that's going to abide by that agreement. Hopefully that helped.
Okay. Mike, on wholesaling, can you elaborate on the REO process? How do I know if the property is on the MLS? If not, does my realtor call the bank about the property?
Yeah, so just kind of a quick overview. Let's start from the beginning. So the property goes into what we call pre-foreclosure. At that moment, they generally schedule the auction date. Now, keep in mind, COVID has changed this up a little bit, but just normally, once the property goes to auction, the bank makes the first bid. We call that the starting minimum bid. And if nobody outbids the bank, guess who bought the property? That's right, the bank just took the property. So you would need to reach out to a real estate agent to help you determine all of these different REO properties that are up for sale. Obviously, you give them your buying criteria. They can pull up, see what is available. If you run into where it is bank owned, but it's not yet up for sale, the only person that really can help you in this case is the listing agent that is generally responsible for listing the REOs. They might have some inside knowledge about certain properties. And I've gone to a lot of realtors about bank-owned properties that the banks haven't given them the information to put up yet, and they didn't know anything about the property. It's not like you said here, they call the bank. There isn't really a department that answers those particular questions. So but that would be the person. Generally, they designate X amount of realtors that specialize in bank-owned properties, and they're responsible for listing those out. So if you can find that person, that's going to be the key to that. So hopefully that helped a little bit.
All right. Looks like that was the last question. If you need any more personal support, want to learn more about our coaching programs, people always ask us this. So looks like we got a little slide here. You can email us at coaching@myreipro.com.
Yep. All right.
All right. I guess we're ready for some live questions and answers here.
Yep. And you get to answer every single one.
Oh, there you go. All right. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in that Q&A panel. I think I have gotten everybody from the chat window to get it over there. Okay, give me 1 second here.
Yeah, that's what, that's why we love doing these things. Obviously, as we say in the top of your screen there, just committed to your success. That's what we do. We're trying to build a tool, a system, the education, doing these live Q&As is, I hope you guys are benefiting from it. I hear a lot of positive stuff. We're going to continually do this for you guys. We want you guys to be successful. I mean, that we are committed to doing that. We're not paying somebody in our office to sit here and take these questions. This is something we believe in. It's something that we enjoy doing. We're passionate about this business. And oh my gosh, this is going to be such a big year. This is going to be a big year, which makes it even more exciting. So anyways.
Okay, so Sean J. So good evening, guys. Is it a good idea to lease option a foreclosure?
If it has already gone through the auction and the bank owns it, then you can't. I say can't because 99.9% of the banks just want to get cashed out. They want to sell the property. They're not going to take terms. Now, I will say Bo did a deal where he got 50 bank-owned properties under lease option. So can it be done?
It can happen.
Generally, it's going to be your smaller banks that have, just a few bank-owned properties that might be able to work with you. Typically, you'd have a relationship with the banker and so on. But most of the time, no, bank-owned properties, you're going to need to go in. They want to be cashed out, be done with the deal, and get it off their books because they need to loan more money. And every liability, every dollar they take back, they can't loan out $3 in loans. So they do want to quickly get rid of the debt.
Yep. Sean, same guy. Okay, so it could be a girl. I live in New York City, and the prices for homes out here are like 600,000 and up. Is the lease option strategy still feasible in your eyes?
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I even recommend this for California too. So lease option is kind of the go-to home run strategy in kind of that more expensive marketplace. Now, I'm not saying go do this on a $3 million house. You could, but here's where I draw the line. It's usually when the owner's mortgage amount is higher than the rental value of that property. And I hope that makes sense. So as you get more expensive, like a $5 million house may not rent out for at least the mortgage on the property. So this is really going to kind of cater, anywhere between that. You could go lower than this, but in an expensive market, 500,000 to like 1.2 million, anywhere in between, and especially kind of more in that 750 range is kind of be your bread and butter. So any expensive market, that's your go-to strategy outside of Texas and Maryland. Let me say that.
All right, let's see here. Larry is saying, when are you going to have a postcard sale again? I'm actually going to answer this one for us, Chris.
Okay.
Because I'm going to answer it in such a way, because I know these are all put back inside of REIPro. I'm going to type something in the chat window here. Hope everybody picks it up. I will make that available tomorrow for you guys just showing up here live and not waiting on the replay. How about that? I hope everybody gets that. Look in the chat window. I'll make that available tomorrow.
I will cut this part out of the replay, right?
We're going to put this part out of the replay.
Okay.
I'll do a 50% off sale for the next 3 days or something like that. How's that sound?
Well, it's definitely going to benefit the people that showed up today. But
Online.
What about all the people like Latanya, I believe that was her name? She's working the third shift, Bo. I mean, come on now.
Oh, well, we'll have to look.
That's not fair.
We'll have to look Latanya up or something. Who knows?
No, who knows? But you guys take advantage of it.
It's gonna be for a short. It's gonna be one of those little flash sales. See, this is live. Chris, he knew I was gonna do that. He'll probably say, "What did we do that for?" Benefit for showing up live.
You better hurry up and put that promotional code in the system.
You know, as soon as we get off, I'll put it up and write in my note right here because I just told everybody I'd do it.
All right.
Right?
So after we finish, give it about 10 minutes before you try it. So
There you go. Okay, next question. Susan, several local title companies I have spoken with and deal with want to charge full price for title searches. I do lease options and fix and flips, and this is getting expensive. Any suggestions on how to curb the cost of these? They seem to not want to do a quick search. Maybe I should call title companies in a larger city because the local ones act like they do not know what I'm asking for. Laugh out loud. Great questions tonight. I'm always learning something. Thanks, guys.
yeah, that sucks actually, because for them to quickly pull up something just to make sure there's no other additional liens or anything crazy, they shouldn't charge you full price for that. And to say, well, in some companies, look, this is how we do it because this is how we do it all the time. They don't know any other way of doing it. With lease options, I wouldn't be too worried about it. As long as I think you kind of get a sense of the people you're dealing with. And most sellers that we do lease options with, they are pretty much, they care about their mortgage payment. They care about things on their credit report and so on. So it would be unlikely, but you obviously keep trying, maybe try to talk to a closing attorney versus a title company in your area and see if they can work with you on that. But obviously, if you're going to buy the property in retail, you definitely are going to have it done anyways when you close. You could actually add a disclosure into the lease option agreement outside of what we already have disclosed in there, because we actually talk about it in the lease option contract. The problem is it carries over to the new buyer, and that's where so I would see if you can maybe find another attorney or an attorney, or I wouldn't worry too much about it. I've never had a lease option deal where there was something crazy we couldn't work out. And generally, when there's going to be these additional things attached to, additional lien that maybe just didn't get picked up or maybe it was placed on during the agreement, it's coming out of the seller's proceeds anyways when your buyer buys. So it's not something you're going to be responsible for. It would be more of like why we do a title search to begin with. It's like if there was an Indian burial ground underneath the property that all of a sudden came about, they would have the right to take the property. And that's, one small example of a title search, and there's many more. But I wouldn't worry too much as long as you get a good sense with the owners that they probably care about what's going on with their own property and their credit and all that.
All right. Darian, in a lease option, is the termite and the pest control, does that count as a utility that the tenant buyer should be paying for, or is that still on the seller?
That's something that the seller could require. Like especially if they had, a termite inspection done and they want that annual inspection to be paid for by you, you might want to agree with that, and then pass that expense over to the buyer. So whatever I agree with the seller, I will pass that along to the new buyer. So that is something that would need to be handled between you and the seller.
What is a single mailer drip campaign? Good question. 12154. Must be on the phone here. As far as the single mailer, we're going to send out one mailer, okay, not two or three in this particular campaign. What this is really designed for is, let's say that you're on a budget or you only want to mail out a certain number of cards, say per week, every 2 weeks, or once a month, until your entire list is exhausted. So for example, if you live in an area that has a ton of absentee owners and you want to send a postcard to every one of them, but let's say there's 20,000 of them, okay? You don't want to mail out all 20,000. You can even handle the phone calls maybe that come back at that time, but maybe you want to send out 1,000 postcards a week or 500 postcards a week. You can choose the single mailer drip, and then you'll be able to specify that I want to send out this many cards and in what frequency you want to send them out. And it puts it on autopilot for you. And we just sit there every week or whenever you tell us, it just drips out and we mail that next block for you.
Yeah. That way you don't have to keep going back.
Yeah.
Because
And
obviously, try pulling an absentee owners list for Los Angeles County. Like it's huge.
Yep.
So you might want to narrow that down so much to where you want to send them all out, but it's same filters, it's the same thing. So you just set it on this drip campaign. So
yeah, and you have multiple ways to pay. I know some people that if they're budget conscious, they may say, I want to send out 250 and I'll pay you for the 250 every single time. Keep in mind when you do it that way, we will bill you whatever the 250 price point is each time that we print. If you have 5,000 or 10,000 in your list, you just want to mail them out so many per week. You just want to go ahead and pay for it up front. It's not a budget thing. It's more of a handling the phone call situation. You can get your biggest discount doing it that way.
Yeah,
paying it all up front.
Totally.
Okay. Long question. So we'll do a little blast on this one. Try to get through it. From George, I'm getting started with wholesaling and I haven't been able to lock anything yet after trying it for over a month. I have a couple of questions. So one, do you prefer one type of lead over another, i.e. pre-foreclosure over vacant? Two, what's the preferred method to reach out to the sellers? Cold call, mailer, bandit signs. Three, we've tried some cold calling. The biggest challenge is getting people to answer. We've been leaving voicemail, text, hoping I got his right number. Is there a method to do this better? Have not heard back from anyone. Four, what is considered a good number of cold calling and mailings per week? And five, if the owner's address is different from the mailing address, where would the mailers go? Whew, there's some good questions in here. So
yeah, if you're just starting out, just ignore the pre-foreclosures.
Yeah.
Ignore that. Let's sometimes it seems like the first deal is the hardest deal.
Well, and you're also learning it right at the same time. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double whammy, right? You're still learning the process, but you're still working it. And it took me 3 months. Now, keep in mind, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to inspect properties. I filled out the contracts wrong. I didn't know what in the world I was doing. But it took 3 months for me, and I was doing it full time, like 7 days a week. That's all I did. So keep it simple. I would stick with the vacant. I would also be driving and looking for those potential vacants as well. People always ask, so, how long do you drive? I keep driving until I find stuff, right? So I'll find X amount of properties, go back, research them. I would send direct mail if you're dealing with a lot of properties. If you have a small amount of properties or leads that you got that day, I would do the skip trace, get their phone number and call them. That's going to be the fastest way to do it. But direct mail is so good in a way that it's, think about somebody that has a house that's vacant. There's no for sale sign. And you call them, say, hi, my name is Chris. I was calling about your property. It appeared to be vacant. Just curious to see if you're wanted. For some people, it'd be like, how'd you get my phone number? It kind of shocks them. Where a postcard or a letter is going to be, it's not as forward or front, let me think about it. Yeah, I do need to get rid of that. Let me just call this guy and see what he's talking about. So, direct mail, I look at from, you've got more properties to work with, especially if you're pulling a list from REIPro, a vacant list, and you've got, 200 properties. You might want to just do direct mail, but if you're driving for dollars and you pulled up 12 properties, maybe try to call them first. And if they don't answer, then you follow up with the direct mail side of it. And then after you send the direct mail side of it, you then follow up again with a phone call. What was the second part of that question?
Oh, it was like 5 parts. And you're kind of answering a lot of them. I want to give a tip on the calling here for a second, because, I was doing a little bit of that. I'm trying to help my mom find a property or a house. And, she had ridden by and found certain things. This one house, and it's not the one I was telling you about, Chris, it's the other one. When I pulled it up in REIPro and I ran the skip trace on it, I've noticed that the lady was deceased. Well, so then of course I'm naturally going to look for the next of kin, and I found first degree. Well, one of those was deceased. I mean, this lady was, really, we got the age on there. She was kind of old, and some of the first siblings and the spouses, one was deceased. Then I'm looking at the 84-year-old. Then I'm looking at somebody with the same last name that's 61 years old. But then I spot this 34-year-old because I had left a message for the 61-year-old, just like what this guy said. Couldn't get him to call me back, but I spotted a 34-year-old on the list. First degree, meaning it's going to be, really within the first cousin or newer. And so I knew a 30-something-year-old's more likely to answer their phone. So I skip traced that person at their home address. And then I called that person. He didn't answer, left a message, but I turned around and texted him what I was wanting. Then he turned around and called me right back. Because the younger crowd seems that's all, they were always on the phone. So I'm just pretty persistent if I want to find somebody.
Yeah, I think one of the questions I believe was, what do you recommend as far as how many mailers or how many calls?
Right.
For me, from a calling standpoint, I keep calling until someone says, yes, I'm interested. So I really don't put a number on that because it's more of time, right? That's all we're talking about is how much time do I have to do it? The direct mail, I would do as much as you could afford to do. Sometimes I've sent out 500 cards and I got one call. I've sent out 20 cards and got 2 calls. It's timing. Real estate investing is all about situational timing. And I really talk a lot about this, that it's not, people go through problems all the time. It's finding those problems at the right time. And you never know when that time is until you reach out to them, you market them. And what I love about direct mail, it's in bulk, right? So if you tried to call 500 properties, it would take a while. It's easy to send out 500 mailers. So some I would split into cold calling, and the others, the majority, I would be doing direct mail. And then a combination of the two.
And the last part of that question, which I think is important, so I want to make sure we get this done. If the owner's address is different from the mailing address, where is the mailer going to go? So the mailer is always going to go to the owner's mailing address, not necessarily the property address. Now, they could be the same and it would go there, but if it's an absentee owner situation, they live somewhere else, we're going to mail it to where on record they're receiving the tax bill. That's the best address to get it to. Now, if you run the list made service to clean up the list, it's also going to run the NCOA, or the National Change of Address, through the post office. And if they have moved and failed to notify the tax assessor of their forwarded mailing address, we will pick that up from the post office and mail it to even a third address that you may not see on your campaign, but we'll show you that on the screen after it's all ran through the list made service.
Yeah, and I'm going to give everybody another reason that I've learned over the years of why I'll call it the winter, because it's pretty much winter in most places right now, is one of the best times to do direct mail. It's because people are not getting out. In the summertime, people are taking vacations. They're walking their dogs. They're going to, games. They're doing things where you're going to find a lot more people at home that really don't have much to do. And they're finding things that, board games and things of that nature, where direct mail has seemed to be more effective during these winter times. So, and in most places, it's pretty cold out there. So what a great time to do it and offer that discount code. So
there you go. Michael, do you offer mentorship options? And if so, what's the cost associated? Hopefully you got the coaching at myreipro.com from the previous screen. And I can put that back up real quick. There it is. Write that down, send us an email, and we can get all the details from there. Justin, I'm new to wholesaling. How do you figure out the closing costs and the taxes to try and determine the end number for the buyer, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Building a relationship with whoever the closing title company or attorney to get an estimated cost. And that's obviously something you're going to need to know to make the offer. Actually, like I won't even make the offer until I understand how much it's going to cost me to get rid of it. So you're trying to think of those things. Obviously, going through our all cash offer formula in step 4 is going to help you. We have some general guidelines, but it is going to be different across the US and depending on where you live. Um, in Georgia, I mean, it was cheap, dirt cheap, probably not cheap to the people that live in Georgia, but for me, I thought it was pretty cheap versus going to other places in the US and buying property. So you definitely want to get those dollar amounts. As far as the tax amounts, you can find that in step 1 of the property and understanding what the tax amounts and values are. So,
All right. Darian, I think asked a previous question, probably about the termite stuff. What about the HOAs? Should that be a cost to the seller or the tenant buyer?
in a lease option,
Probably he's talking about in a lease option.
yeah, the seller is responsible for paying it because
Yeah.
keep in mind, the seller's just leasing the property with the option to buy. Now, I will say my last lease option deal, I paid for the HOAs because I agreed to do it because it made my deal look better to the seller. So you can negotiate those things, but generally speaking, the owner is going to want to pay for it because they still own the house.
Right. Nikki, when wholesaling a short sale, what happens if the bank doesn't accept the offer? Wholesaling a short sale.
Yeah, generally a short sale is
A long
where
sale.
a homeowner owes more than what it's worth. So you would never be able to wholesale it. And that's why we're a short sale. That's what you have to do. The bank is willing to sell basically the property for less than what is owed. And the bank is going to take the hit because they don't want it as a liability. They just want to get rid of the property. If the bank does not accept the short sale offer, you're not going to be buying that particular property. We need to move on.
Okay, JT, thank you guys so much for helping us. My question is, if I come across a property in pre-foreclosure, for example, they owe 313,000, but they're asking 560. How should I approach it?
Sometimes sellers need a reality check.
Yeah, they're about to lose all of it.
And a lot of people don't realize that if that property goes to auction and they end up losing that property, it's going to be very difficult for the homeowner to even rent another place. I want you to think about it. If the homeowner can't make payments on their own home, why would they pay a landlord? They can't afford it. So it's going to be, and sometimes when you bring out, it's going to, if you don't do the deal, you're going to end up losing everything. So can you work the deal to where the seller can actually profit a little bit of money? Absolutely. When you have a big spread like that, you could take over the property, make up the back payments, bring the loan current, fix up the property, resell the property, and do a promissory note with the owner that they would receive X dollar amount when that closing happens. So they could actually make some money. It's going to save their credit. I mean, there's so many positive things, but there's also so many negative things that are going to happen if they don't do it. And sometimes you have to have that conversation. So hopefully that helped.
Yeah, so let me get back up here.
We'll
Keith,
take a
how does a
few more.
wholesaler get paid from a pre-foreclosure deal?
The assignment fee. So once I structure the deal, the entire, all the numbers and everything, I'm going to assign that whole deal over for a fee. And that fee is going to be really dependent on how the numbers work out, what the investor is willing to pay for the deal and so on.
Brooke, as I embark on cold calling as a newbie, should I get a Google number or some other type of number other than my cell phone number? These sessions are so helpful. Many thanks.
I think if you're just starting out and you don't want to spend a lot of money, just use your cell number. Get started, right? Because things change when you close that first deal, right? Um, we use a paid service for all of our phone systems. Phone.com is who we use. There's many other companies out there. Google number, I used to recommend a Google number, and I honestly can't remember why I don't recommend it. There's something they do, and I can't remember what it is.
Other than to say, please hold while the Google subscriber is located.
It may be that. I can't remember. There's
Just
a
from a
reason why I
professional
don't
standpoint or
recommend doing
something.
it.
Yeah. All right. Tara Lynn, pre-foreclosure. How can you select properties to make a list in several different kind of pauses there? I'm not sure what the word was, or by zip codes. So I'm assuming they're trying to do several different searches, maybe in different areas, different counties, or multiple zip codes. Yeah. Right there on the filter side on the left side of the screen.
Here, I'll
you can
do
put
it
in
real quick.
Yeah, that'd be good. Show them.
So once we go to REIPro, let me just do an absentee owner. I'm going to pick a zip code. You can do city and all that stuff. Go to the locations over here to the left, and you can just start typing in other areas. So let's say that we're working. I'm trying to think of another area zip code. I can't think of it, but
just put in, or you can put in a county, put in Coweta
Yeah.
County. Because it can be zip code or county or city.
I was going to do spring, but I couldn't think of so then I'm going to hit apply changes, and then that will take effect. So
now this is 3 different areas, and you're going to want to build, this would be building possibly one list, doing it that way. Or you could go back to say the 30269, select your leads, add them to a campaign at the bottom of that left-hand filter. There's add to campaign. Then you could go back up, change out the zip code for another area, hit apply, then select those leads and add it to a separate campaign, because it sounds like you're trying to maybe build different campaigns. That would be how you do it. If you're trying to build one campaign but several zip codes, you just combine them in the locations.
Yeah, this would be the easiest way of doing it if you're using the same postcard and same filters in multiple areas, which a lot of people do it that way. This would be the easiest way right there.
Eric, what's the advantage of working with or finding a real estate broker or brokerage? Do they approve the financing deals that you create, or can my attorney make the notes official? Eric Williams in Maryland. What's the deal with, and then I'll ask something else about lease. Several people on here are from Maryland. I'm going to save that part of the question for a second. So any advantage of working with or finding real estate brokers to work with?
From a lease option buyer point of view, yes. We use them.
Yep.
So they're going to help your buyers qualify, point them in the right track, get things squared away so they can actually get financing. From that point of view, obviously, if the brokers work with investors from a point of view of lending, you would want to work with them as well.
All right, Eric, and he's got several questions along the way. And so also Esther, they're kind of really asking the same things, unless it's the same, I'm not sure. But anyway, they're in Maryland. Some of it's about the lease options in Maryland. They're hearing a lot about the restrictions. A few market areas they're looking into. What about wholesale? Is there any restriction on the wholesaling? Another one about lease options. So
it's really lease options and pre-foreclosures. Pre-foreclosures, you cannot contact the owner outside of 20 days before the auction, right? So it kind of makes it a little more difficult. The lease option is going to sound. How many people are from Maryland on here?
Well, I kind of had the same logo. One of them said Eric and the other said Esther. I'm not sure if it was the same person, 2 different names, but I assume it's 2 different people, both from Maryland, at least what I'm scrolling through right now.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to actually show you.
While he's doing that, one question way down the list, is this Q&A going to be available to rewatch after it's over? Yes, it will be able to rewatch in full inside of REIPro.
give me one. I'm going to type this in the Q&A. And I'm
Okay.
not going to go into detail on this. Let me find my way back now. Where can I type something out, Bo? You're the
Do it in the chat. That'd be the easiest place, and pick all attendees.
where there's chat.
It's under the more button.
Dun, dun, dun. I see it. It's going to be weird, but you have to put this on the top of a lease option contract, and it's going to sound. It just makes it so difficult for you to do it in Maryland. And I'm going to tell everybody what it says: rent to own agreement. This is not a contract to buy, which kind of is, but it's not. Maryland requires this to be on here, which, can you imagine explaining that to the owner? And we've done it. I just pulled it from a contract with one of my students. I would not recommend doing lease options without some help. You really need to know the language and how to approach these people in Maryland, and how do you communicate with the owner. You really need to get some coaching on that, because that takes up a lot of my time to really go through that process. But anyways, there's what would need to go in the top part of the contract.
All right. I'm glad you're on this screen here. Ebony, I am newbie and I need to learn how to comp. Can you please show me an example of how to determine the ARV of a property? You can use any property of your choice. I just want to know how to determine which properties are closer to the subject property. Thanks, guys.
Well, the biggest thing is square footage. That is the number one thing. So, whoops, when I go here and pull the comp screen up, the number one thing I look at is square footage. So I'm going to scroll over. I know this property is just over 1,800 square foot. I'm going to scroll down till I can at least find something similar from that point of view. Then I want to make sure that the bedrooms and baths pretty much equal out. Sometimes, this one's a 4.3, the subject. This could be a 4.2. That's pretty comparable. Again, we have a 4.3 here. I'm going to say, okay, when did it sell? What did it sell for? This one actually, D was actually a recent MLS sale. But then I'm going to say, okay, what condition was that property in when it sold? Because you obviously don't want to take distressed properties. And if you click this little link here to the left of the price, that's going to open up a new tab. And what I like about this, you go to like a Zillow where they store pictures and kind of get a good feel of what the condition of that property was in when it did sell. I always say take the highs, take the lows, and eliminate them, because in real estate, we're trying to find that happy middle. And so I'm going to go through this process. And then obviously I want to select more than this one property. So I want to take as many as that are comparable, and then click that calculate ARV, and that's going to give you that after repaired value. And that was kind of a short training series, but we do have some training videos on this that go into a lot more detail in the help video section.
All right, Justin, are the title attorney companies that you show in step 9 closing familiar with wholesaling deals, or are they just there as a suggestion of using not so much what they know how to do? Just curious.
Some don't have a clue what that is. Today, it's more common to know what that is. Some title companies refuse to do those types of transactions. So you do need to build that relationship with those title companies and or closing attorneys. If you have a problem with the title company, I always try to go to a closing attorney and build a relationship there. They just understand contracts more and what you're doing. Where a title company, 99.9% of the closings have a buyer, seller, realtor, and a bank. It's like the traditional closing. So you do need to research those particular companies and or attorneys, make sure that they understand how to do a wholesale, or what they call assignments. They would understand that term more than the term wholesale.
All right, I've got a couple more questions
Couple
here.
more.
Yep, two more. Michael, do you believe it's a good or bad idea to transact properties outside of title and only do a warranty deed? Or what is your take about things like this when a seller doesn't want to go to the title company, assuming you're cashing them out?
I'm not too worried about those things. Me personally, of course, I don't teach it that way because I've got to teach it to the general marketplace, but I'm not too worried. But if the seller refuses to, like, is there something wrong? That might, throw up a red flag for me. Outside the fact that it's COVID and they're not going to go, they're 75 years old, whatever it may be. They don't have to go to closing. All the documents could be FedExed. We could have a notary show up at the door. They could sign everything and get the paperwork back. So I think that answered his question.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Jamal,
I keep talking, I forget what the freaking question was. Because I'm trying, one thing as an educator, it's something I have to improve on, but I'm thinking like 10 steps ahead of the question, because as soon as I answer the immediate question, it brings another question into play. So sometimes I try to answer that next question all within the same conversation. And sometimes I forget what the heck. I'm getting old, man. You see that
yeah,
gray here?
he said it answered his question, so thanks.
All
How do
right.
I get a list of investors to buy the property that the seller agrees on?
From a wholesale deal, I mean, the best way to find investors, number one, obviously you could do a direct mail campaign to cash buyers, but check with your local Facebook groups, post, some properties out there. You're going to start to get people that, from an investor standpoint, the new investor, the investor that buys a bunch of property, you're going to get a mix of people from a Facebook point of view. If you could promote it on Zillow, that would even be even better.
I know we only, this is something I think this is probably the last question we really have time for tonight, but I think it's a good one. So I definitely want to jump in here on this one. Get your take on it too, Chris. But Justin, he said, I'm having a problem right now with a property in West Virginia. On Zillow, the property is saying it's 5,300 square feet, but on REIPro and another competitor site, it says it's 3,200 square feet. And the owner is saying it's 5,300 square feet. And the house was built in 1940 with no additions built on or after. Should I just run with that or what? And yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to stick with attorneys because several title companies in Maryland are confusing. And then you follow up, he's saying, and as a continuation of that prior question, but the reason he's asking is the comps are saying around 126,000. They're asking 195. He's got them down to 150, but he doesn't feel like that's low enough. And they said that if they finish themselves, they're going to sell for 300, but there's nothing close to those numbers anywhere around for comps. This is one of those where sometimes people, and I don't know if you said this is on a basement or not, they'll try to throw the basement square footage and call it, hey, it's a total of 5,300 square feet. A lot of the software companies out there, I know we will split it out between, it's 3,200 square feet. That's the main level. And that's what we're really going to use in running these comparable sales. Now, can you get a little bit more for the property on a price per square foot because it has a finished out basement? Yes, you can get some, but it's not going to be dollar for dollar, and a lot of people try to play that game in some areas and go, oh, it's 5,300 square feet. You got to give me dollar for dollar for all 5,300 square feet. And it's just not going to appraise for that. So, if you've got multiple softwares telling you it's 3,200, more than likely, it's probably going to be the main square footage on the main level. If it's a basement, again, that could be the basement area. So not sure really. He actually just typed in and said it's not a finished basement or a finished attic. So not real sure where Zillow would be getting the 5,300 if other sources and multiple sources.
Well, I can tell you exactly where that number comes
the owner.
So things that get listed in Zillow, the majority of time come from an actual realtor that put the numbers in. Right. So at some point, if the property's sold, Zillow's been around for quite some time now. They're going to go with what they're actually advertising and saying, hey, this is what the square footage is. There's a lot of times. Now, if the owner's saying that it's big, did they expand? Because we're going to take it from the tax assessor. So they're getting taxed on X square footage. But if a realtor manually put in, hey, this property is 5,300 square feet, is the realtor including like the front porch that has screened in front porch? What are they actually including? Because if a realtor puts in 5,300 and tells the person it's 5,300, people start believing, no, it's 5,300. They don't even know, right? So
Yeah.
you got to be careful with those things from a tax assessor standpoint, unless they've added on to the house and the tax assessor has not reappraised the new square footage. That's something that I'd pay attention to. So,
Well, Justin, you can also just kind of quickly, I know there's some apps out there, you can touch one wall here and one wall there, and to give you the square footage of that room. You can do that room for room on a quick walkthrough and kind of verify that it's 5,300, and if the comps aren't justifying it, I would be a little bit hesitant. I would not overpay. That's definitely something you don't want to do, is overpay and be upside down going into the deal. So
all right.
hopefully that helped you guys. All right. So that
Awesome.
was the last of the questions. Hey, thanks all you guys for hanging in there all the way to the end. If you will give me about 5 minutes, I'm going to put up that promo code for you guys, and it will be live from now, and I will do it to the end of the month.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention the wholesaling course. You can click the link on the dashboard, but if you go to Wholesaling Real Estate Blueprint, it's only $97. It does expire in a few days. So those that want to learn more, the foundation, the technique of the strategy, that's what the home study course is there for. We do have a wholesaling training series, but this is a little bit different in a way of explaining the actual strategy. So we do ship a 3-ring binder, and then we email the forms, videos, audio that's associated with that. It helps keep the price down for everybody as well. But that's going to expire in a few days. So you might want to take advantage of that as well. So
Perfect.
awesome. Have a great week and weekend, because it's almost there. And get out there. Hopefully you learned a lot, and look forward to seeing you guys on our next live Q&A. So keep an eye out for it.